The sound of my own blood dripping onto the hardwood floor seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Each drop hit with a sharp finality, soaking into the beige rug I had worked 3 paychecks to buy. My vision blurred, narrowed, locked on those crimson dots spreading like accusations. Mom's handprint still burned across my cheek, her wedding ring having caught the afternoon light as it struck. Dad's fingers dug into my arm, pinning me against the bookshelf where my head had slammed the corner. My skull throbbed, warm blood trickling down my temple. Ungrateful brat, Mom spat, adjusting her purse strap like nothing had happened. You think you're better than us now? Behind her, my daughter, Emma, stood frozen in the doorway. She was only 8 years old, her small hands trembling. For years, I'd shielded her from the ugly truth of my family. But now, here it was, laid bare in the cruelest way possible. Daddy, she cried, running toward me. But Mom blocked her path. Stay out of this, little girl, she snapped. Maybe if your father listened like your Uncle Jacob does, he wouldn't get punished. If you are enjoying this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey of betrayal and unexpected revenge. My name is George. I'm 34, a single father, and this was the breaking point. I struggled to stand, my legs unsteady beneath me. On the coffee table, the text message that had started it all still glowed on my phone screen. Rent is due. Help your brother out. We raised you better than this. I had ignored it. 2 hours later, they showed up at my duplex like debt collectors. No warning. No courtesy. Just entitlement. Mom hadn't knocked, she'd pounded the door with both fists. Dad loomed behind her, smug as ever, ready to deliver one of his tired lectures. Why aren't you answering our messages? Mom demanded the second I opened the door. I've already told you, I said, voice steady though my chest ached. I can't pay Jacob's rent this month. Emma's dental procedure had drained my emergency fund. My brother's refusal to hold a job was not my emergency. Oh, so your daughter's teeth are more important than your brother having a roof over his head? Dad sneered, stepping inside uninvited. I'm not responsible for his lifestyle, I said, standing my ground. He's 28. He had options. He chose not to work. Don't put that on me. That's when everything exploded. Mom hurled her purse across the room. Then came the slap, sharp, humiliating. Dad's hands closed around my arm, shoving me toward the wall. My head cracked against the bookshelf. Emma screamed. Now, minutes later, they sat on my couch like they owned the place. My bleeding temple didn't matter. My daughter's tears didn't matter. All they cared about was Jacob's rent. We'll leave when you transfer the money, Dad barked. Until then, we'll stay right here and make sure you don't waste it. I looked at Emma's tear-streaked face. Something inside me, something that had bent for years, something that had yielded out of guilt and misplaced loyalty, suddenly hardened. Get out, I whispered. My voice was low. Cold. Mom laughed bitterly. Or what? You'll call the cops on your own parents. Even you aren't that pathetic. I didn't answer. I simply walked to Emma, took her hand, and led her to the bedroom. I locked the door behind us, my fingers trembling. She curled against me in the darkness, whispering, Dad, why do Grandma and Grandpa hate you? I had no words. None. My throat closed, but something deeper than pain shifted inside me that night. I stared at the ceiling, connecting dots I had ignored for decades, the favoritism, the manipulation, the endless demands, and now, violence. By morning, I wasn't the same man I had been. I dropped Emma at school, sunglasses hiding my swollen eye. I told her we'd be okay. And for the first time in years, I meant it. Instead of driving to the office, I drove straight to the courthouse. My mind had never been clearer. 2 years earlier, I had started saving in silence. Every raise. Every bonus. Every freelance job. I wasn't just saving, I was investing. One of those investments had been in the very house my parents lived in. My childhood home. They had no idea. And when I left the courthouse that day, medical report in hand, emergency restraining order approved, I knew exactly how this battle was going to end. This time, they wouldn't win. The courthouse doors swung shut behind me with a heavy thud that seemed to echo through my chest. The officer's words replayed in my head like a bomb, "You did the right thing. Let us handle the rest." I sat in my car for a long moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. For years, I had been the son who gave, the brother who bailed out, the man who bent so everyone else could stand taller. But that morning, with a restraining order tucked into my jacket, I felt the first true breath of freedom I'd ever taken. And I wasn't done. I called the property manager for my childhood home, the house my parents still rented month to month. "Are they behind again?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They've skipped 3 months," she replied. "We were preparing to send a notice." "Don't," I said quietly. "Let me handle it." By the time I hung up, the plan was set. Not revenge, no, this was justice. This was balance. They had used love as a weapon my entire life, twisting it into chains. Now, those chains were snapping link by link. That night, as Emma slept peacefully in her bed, my phone buzzed. A new number. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. "Dad, you've embarrassed this family." "Mom, Emma needs to learn who the real villains are." "Dad. You'll regret choosing outsiders over your own brother." The blue glow lit my face in the darkness. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I blocked the number without a word. They didn't know the certified letter was already on its way. A 30-day eviction notice stamped and sealed, ready to tear away the safety net they had always assumed I would provide. 1 week later, I ran into Jacob. Of course it had to be in the grocery store. He pushed a cart overflowing with expensive protein powders, designer snacks, and imported energy drinks. My own cart carried budget pasta and vegetables marked down for quick sale. He smirked when he saw me. "Still playing the victim," he said, tossing a bottle of overpriced supplements into his cart. "You mean the victim of your freeloading?" I replied calmly, meeting his eyes without blinking. "I'm not playing anything. You're about to watch the stage crumble beneath your spotlight." He frowned, confused. "What the hell are you talking about?" I didn't answer. Some people don't learn by being warned. Some only learn by falling. The eviction letter landed in my parents' mailbox the next morning. Mom called me, screaming from yet another new number. "How could you do this to us? We're your family. You're throwing us out like garbage." I held the phone steady. "The same way you could hit your son in front of his child. Easy." Her voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" For a split second, the little boy inside me, the one who had spent his entire life begging for their approval, nearly caved. But then I remembered Emma's terrified face as she watched me bleed on the rug. "That's your problem," I said flatly. "Maybe Jacob can cover your rent for once." Silence. Then a sharp click as she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean. The days that followed were chaos. They called relatives, painting me as cruel, ungrateful, mentally unstable. But I stayed quiet. The restraining order spoke louder than I ever could. And the people who truly knew me didn't need convincing. Instead, I poured my energy into Emma. We drove by small houses until I found the right one, a modest home just a few streets away. It wasn't big, but it had a fenced yard, sunlight in the mornings, and lavender bushes out front that Emma adored. When I told her we were moving, her eyes widened. "Really? Where to?" To a place that's truly ours, I said. She smiled so wide it nearly broke me. Meanwhile, word reached me through my cousin Mark that Jacob had already distanced himself. The same brother my parents worshipped, the same one I had been told to sacrifice for, was now too busy to help them pack or find housing. Poetic. I wasn't vengeful, I was healed. But I knew the final confrontation was still coming. The eviction date loomed, and with it, a reckoning that had been decades in the making. And this time, Emma wanted to be there. I want to see what it looks like when people get what they deserve, she told me, her little face serious beyond her years. I looked at her, my chest tightening with both pride and sadness. She had seen too much, too soon. But maybe this was her lesson too, the one I had taken a lifetime to learn. The morning of the eviction was sharp and gray, the kind of day where the sky itself seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood beside me, her small hand in mine, her face hidden beneath the brim of her favorite cap. The sheriff's cruiser was already parked in front of the old house. A deputy stepped out, nodding at me with quiet recognition. "Morning, George. Ready?" I wasn't sure if anyone could ever be ready for this, but I nodded anyway. We walked up the cracked walkway together. Emma squeezed my hand tighter when the front door creaked open. My parents appeared in the frame, their expressions a cocktail of rage and desperation. Behind them, boxes were stacked haphazardly, evidence that the notice had been taken seriously after all. Mom's eyes darted to Emma. "You brought her here? To humiliate us in front of your child?" I met her glare with calm steel. She deserves to see what accountability looks like. Dad's face flushed red, his voice booming. "You think you're some hero because you've got the law on your side? You're nothing without us. We made you." Emma stepped forward before I could respond. Her little voice cut through the tension like glass. "All you made was pain." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Jacob wasn't there. He hadn't lifted a finger to help them, just as I'd known he wouldn't. For years, I had been forced into the role of savior while he floated above responsibility. And now, in the one moment they needed him most, he was nowhere. The deputy cleared his throat. "It's time." My parents tried to argue, voices trembling between anger and pleading, but it didn't matter. The law was no longer on their side. The sheriff stood firm, and for once, I didn't waver either. Emma tugged at my sleeve as we turned to leave. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we the bad guys now?" I crouched down so we were eye to eye. "No, sweetheart. Bad guys take and take until there's nothing left. We stopped giving them that power. That's not bad, that's brave." Her eyes glistened, and for the first time in months, I saw not fear but understanding. As we walked back to the car, I glanced one last time at the house where I had been raised, where my childhood had been stolen by manipulation and abuse. I thought I would feel guilt. Or sorrow. But all I felt was release. Driving away, Emma leaned her head against the window, her voice soft but certain, "I'm glad we don't belong there anymore." And just like that, I knew the cycle had ended. No more chains. No more blood spilled for people who mistook love for leverage. That chapter was over. We had written our own ending. And in it, Emma and I were free. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. Blood may bind you, but it does not define you. When family becomes the poison, cutting ties isn't cruelty, it's survival. And survival is the purest form of justice. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family? Tell your story in the comments below.